There is so much manga out there. In fact, there is so much that it would be impossible to know every title that exists. And it's especially difficult because not every title gets localized into English. Because of this, a lot of manga go underappreciated because you can't just walk into a Barnes & Noble and pick it up. If you wanted to read some of those titles, you would need to order a Japanese copy online, and that's assuming you can even read Japanese. But fan translations do exist, so these manga aren't completely unavailable. But without the advertising of a company like Viz, it can be hard to know what's worth reading, so you have to do some digging. Look at other works by established names, take shots in the dark based on cover illustrations, or find a YouTube video of someone recommending a manga they randomly found. The manga I am going to share with you all today doesn't have an English release or an anime to speak of, but it does have a really sweet story and some of the cutest art I have ever seen. This is Salt God Sato-san is Only Sweet to Me. Salt God Sato-san originally started out in June of 2019 as a web novel written by Kazami Sawatari. Then, in December of that same year, Shogakukan turned it into an illustrated light novel with art by Atiki. Then, in May of 2020, Manga 1 made it into a manga with art by Kaya Tetsuyama. Our protagonist is Sota Oshio, and he is in the same class as the beautiful Salt God, real name Koharu Sato. She got this nickname because of how mean she appears to be to everyone who approaches her. One day, Oshio is working in the cafe run by his father, when he sees the Salt God herself sitting down trying to take a picture of some pancakes. Then Oshio watches as a group of guys tries to hit on her. Classic trope. Oshio makes them go away by calling his bodybuilder of a father over. Sato-san grabs hold of Oshio and starts to cry, showing him that she isn't all salt all the time. They then somehow find themselves in Oshio's room, where Sato tells him that she wants to be a popular Instagrammer, and asks him to look at photos of the pancakes she took earlier. The photos are, well, bad. So Oshio offers up some advice on how to take pictures, and we find out that Sato wants to be an Instagrammer in order to make friends. At the end of the chapter, Sato leaves, and Oshio thinks to himself that he can't believe that his first love was in his room. And then we see that Sato is thinking that she can't believe she was in her first love's room.
He's so fluffy, I'm gonna die!
This plot is filled with a ton of tropes, but it is so sweet. The reveal that Sato has a crush on Oshio genuinely made me kick my feet with excitement. It is just too cute. But the thing that makes this part even more impactful is the art that depicts it. I'm normally not the guy to gush about the art in a manga, but the art in this series is top class. In fact, the art is the reason why I discovered this series. At the first convention I ever went to, I found myself at a table that was selling doujinshi. Now, if you're not familiar with the term, doujinshi essentially means independent. These are books that are self-published by the author and are sold at places like Comiket. Most of the ones you have heard of are probably NSFW, and those are the ones that I ended up picking up. I ended up getting 4 of them, but my standout favorite has got to be this one, 297669, or Book to Have Happy Sex with Cat Ear Maid. Now, you're probably asking the question, devbrevyt, why would a man who's not into cat girls own a cat girl doujin? And that's a very good question. So one day I was looking at this doujin and I thought, man, this art is really good. I wonder if the artist is working on anything else. So I went onto their Twitter and discovered that they were working on Salt God Sato-san. And this is a great way to find new manga. Artists are always tweeting about what they're working on and will even retweet what their friends are working on. The art in this series is super clean. The eyes are drawn exceptionally well, and since the eyes are most of the face, it is what makes the art look so good. Plus, the character designs are stunning. Now, since this is a light novel adaptation, Tetsuyama-san didn't come up with them. They were designed by Atiki. And looking at the covers of the light novel and Atiki's Twitter, you can see that the two have a very similar art style. So it makes sense why the characters look so good. But manga isn't just about the art, it's also about the story. And the story in this is good. The series starts off very strongly by focusing on Oshio and Sato flirting with each other. These moments are very cute and are a good contrast to Sato's salty side. My favorite moment has to be when they go to get boba, and as they are standing in line, Sato keeps trying to prevent Oshio from looking at some gyaru who are in front of them in line. And after they get the boba, one of the gyaru does the boob table thing, which prompts Sato to do it herself. I was reading this chapter in bed, and this moment made me sit up like The Undertaker. Holy! This is how the story starts, and it is very standard. There is going to be a lot of cute flirting in romance manga, but there also needs to be progress in a romance manga. One of the negatives of Salt God Sato-san is that Oshio and Sato's relationship progresses very, very slowly. Typically in romance manga, you want to see a steady progression from holding hands to the first kiss, and even sometimes beyond. But these two take so long just to hold hands. But when these two do make progress, it looks awesome, like this lap pillow scene. This is gorgeous. Put it in the Louvre. And while on the topic of negative things, this series relies on a crutch where every time there is a new arc, a new character or two will be introduced that the author can now play with. Now, while having a lot of characters isn't a bad thing, having an overabundance of characters that we don't use is. This is a quantity over quality thing. It's better to have 4 really good characters that all develop in interesting ways and have good individual arcs than to have 8 characters that all act like they are important but don't actually contribute anything to the overall story. And since these characters are being introduced at the beginning of arcs, that means that their character arcs coincide with the current story arc, like Mio in the Cultural Festival arc and Suna in the Job arc. They have a huge spotlight put on them right after being introduced, but they blend into the background once the story moves on. And with characters like Rinka and Murasaki, they were introduced early when there were less characters, and I feel like there is more to explore with them. Like Rinka having a crush on Oshio, and Murasaki having a little romance with Ren, Oshio's best friend. Rinka and Murasaki seemed like they would be bigger parts of the story, but since we introduce new characters all the time, they get pushed further into the background, making appearances every so often. So, there are too many characters. But they all look so good. Rinka is cute, Suya is precious, Mio is striking, and Shizuku and Mayo are old enough to where if I call them hot, no one will call me weird. Sorry, I got sidetracked by the art again. I was supposed to be talking about the story. A couple of minutes ago, I was talking about the character arcs, and I think that this is where the writing is the best. But when it comes to some of the plot lines, some of the plot lines are pretty generic. I've already mentioned the standard flirting plot at the beginning of the story, but there is also the beach arc, which is filled with some classic tropes. These arcs are fine, but there isn't anything that stands out about them too much, other than, again, the art. But there are some plot lines that are more unique, like the job arc, where both Oshio and Sato each get part-time jobs in order to get a present for the other. I haven't seen this done a lot before, so it gets points for uniqueness. But I feel like it goes on for a little too long because Sato jumps around from job to job over multiple chapters, and the two aren't together in this arc very much, which doesn't help the relationship progress. And then there is the Cultural Festival arc, which sounds really tropey, but has the unique element of the Salt God Sato-san fan club, or SSF for short, which sounds like the name of a terrorist organization. And honestly, they kind of act like one. These guys are led by... Okay, I need to be very careful of my enunciation here. Niga, and they are all boys who were rejected by Sato and are upset to see her lose her saltiness because she is dating Oshio. So they constantly assault Oshio. While the SSF is unique to this series, it's pretty dumb, which doesn't help raise the quality of the story. Overall, I feel like the story is good, but can dip below at some points. Salt God Sato-san has some cute art that carries a pretty generic story. Because of this, I would recommend checking it out, but don't feel like you have to rush on it. It's still being published, and I don't feel like this series is worth the monthly grind, but it is a good binge. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments. Have you heard of this series before, and is it something that you're willing to check out? And while you're down there, make sure to leave a like. And If you like videos about manga that you might not have heard of before, I have a video on a series called May I Live With You that you might want to check out. And of course, consider subscribing so that you don't miss more videos. And with that, sayonara. Now, if you're not familiar with the term, doujinshi essentially translates to independent. No, that's fucking stupid. What the hell? I'm like a magician pulling socks out. What the hell?